I'm here with Alex Mendez from Remora Cyber Consulting. Now, Alex, you have a background in banking and cybersecurity, and you're currently doing some really interesting work with some fintechs. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, certainly. Thanks for having me, Carla. One of the things that we're actually doing is helping fintech companies actually become much more cyber ready. And they got very interesting technology that's actually disrupting the way that big financial organizations actually do markets and products. And that's good from the consumer point of view, but it's also actually leaving some gaps that we believe in the longer terms are going to be quite serious.
Okay. One of the things that comes up for companies of all sizes is, what does good look like? So if you're an up-and-coming fintech, what does good security look like?
I think it's a combination of three different things. So in the first part, what we actually recommend is having a solid framework that will allow them to scale up and grow as the business actually increases. The second thing that we always recommend is having a solid team around the risk management point of view, because cybersecurity obviously looks at the technology, but we don't underestimate the human side, and that takes me into the final part, which is to ensure that everyone in the organization understands their role across the full spectrum of the products that they're developing.
Now, security often comes back to building trust and the trust that consumers have in those companies to protect their data and their money. Do you feel that that's an issue for consumers when thinking about using a fintech?
I think it is an issue for consumers that are actually perhaps a bit more savvy, and they become much more aware in the media of the sort of more long-term effects that data breaches will have. But what we're seeing is that a lot of these products that are actually coming out from that industry tend to be catered for a younger type of audience, where they're more technically savvy when it comes down to the use of technology, but not necessarily at the same level when it comes about the protection of the data.
Mm-hmm. And are you seeing companies really take this seriously?
We have. So what we see is that when they actually grow in that space, there are three different phases. So the first level is the startup, where they go proof of concept, brilliant idea. They think that they're going to be the next unicorn, and they're growing and acquiring a lot of businesses and users. The second phase is when they actually have got a sort of reasonable amount of capital behind them that allows them to actually expand the business and increase the actual footprint that they're reaching. And then the final one, when they have got a bit more maturity and they've been able to actually become a contentious and a competitive force to some of the big banks. Each one of those sectors has very specific requirements when it comes down to cyber.
And in comparison to the big banks, who obviously have a lot of money, a lot of resources, have been doing this a long time, where do you see the differences?
I think one of the big differences is that the big banks are, although they are regulated, they've actually been in the space for a long time, so they are much more familiar with the regulation risk that poses, and as a result of that, they are more cautious when it comes down to implementing new technologies, whereas the young type of technologies that are going in, the level of regulation is not that entrenched, and therefore they got a level of flexibility that allows them to go beyond the boundaries of what big banks can do. That is positive, but you need to have, as I said earlier, a team that is going to be able to help them grow in the right way. Failure to do that, I think that means that they're having to retrofit a cyber solution that might be costly in the long term.
Having the right people is often the key to most things. How do you think fintechs are doing on that? Are they managing to attract the right sort of cyber people?
I think it's mixed. Certainly with the number of clients that we operate, the main focus is about getting the right team in terms of the technology that can actually create those products in an agile manner. But I think the risk management portion, which is more established, more mature, is not necessarily actually being brought into probably the second or third phases that I mentioned earlier. So what that means is that in the early stages, it's perhaps an area that is being overlooked.
And if you were advising people who were considering making that move, what would you say?
I think technology is very exciting. We certainly are seeing that technology is going to be here for the next 100 years unless something dramatically happens. But the point being is that it should be seen as an enabler, and in doing so, it needs to be done in the right way. And in the same way that we are trying to actually ensure that cybersecurity is seen as an operational component, in the same way that right now people don't smoke inside a building because of the sort of fire hazards and so forth. In the future, data privacy and cybersecurity are going to be part of that way of implementing technological products.
And as we look forward to the year ahead, what do you think we'll see for cybersecurity?
I think there are three main trends that are actually converging now. So the first one relates to the fact that a lot of companies are actually realizing, coming to terms that they are actually information processing businesses in a way that it was not done before, and that in itself is what gives them that competitive advantage. So in other words, if you are in your area, which is recruitment and talent attraction, you got a number of databases that will be unique to you. The way that you actually use that information and gives you something that is going to be different to your competitors. And that gives me the second trend, which is the big data, the actual implementation of all those different components that gives you that business intelligence. And there are a number of things that you probably have seen taking place. But the main point is that human interaction is still going to be needed. There is going to be a much more reliance on technology. And then the final one, certainly from the risk point of view, we're saying that the actual Internet of Things is becoming, or will become, much more integrated and ubiquitous in the things that we do. And as a result of that, it is going to present great opportunities but equally big risks. So to sum up, three things. So is the data processing that business will have, the big data mining, and what we see as the Internet of Things. There are a number of different things that are actually taking place in there, but it's the convergence of all those different industries that will create other things that we're not able to even visualize at this moment in time.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for speaking with me this morning. I'm sure everyone's found that really useful.
Thank you very much, Carla.
Thank
Hope to see you
you.
again.